Welcome back to my channel and to the little corner of my lounge room where I tend to film all of my permaculture related videos. I am super excited to dive into today's topic. This is going to be the first of 12 videos where I'm diving into each of the 12 principles of permaculture. So I've made a video which I recommend you check out. It's an overview of what permaculture is as kind of like an epistemological system or a way of thinking about how we can engage in the wider world. And I spoke about the ethics of permaculture, the 12 principles of permaculture, and the permaculture flower. So if you're kind of new to permaculture or you're not super familiar with those, just check that one out. It's a great overview. But today we're going to be diving into the first principle of permaculture, which is to observe and interact. Now, this is a really important principle, and I can understand why it's the first of 12, because observation and interaction is kind of the first initial stage of both systems thinking and design thinking. And permaculture as a design system or a way of life is really grounded in systems and design thinking. So to give you a little bit of an overview, first of all, of those two things.
Systems thinking is a holistic approach that views the world as a network of interconnected systems where every component influences and is influenced by others. Unlike conventional thinking, which often focuses on linear cause and effect relationships, systems thinking emphasizes the emergent properties of systems, feedback loops, and the interconnectedness of elements. This perspective is particularly crucial in permaculture, where ecosystems, human behavior, and societal dynamics are all interdependent. In contrast, conventional thinking will often isolate problems and address them in isolation, leading to solutions that may create unintended consequences in other parts of the system. For example, increasing agricultural yields through chemical fertilizers might solve short-term food shortages, but can lead to soil degradation and water pollution in the long term. Systems thinking, on the other hand, seeks to identify patterns, relationships, and leverage points within a system, enabling solutions that enhance the whole rather than benefiting one part at the expense of another. Observation and interaction are central to systems thinking because they allow us to understand these complex dynamics. By observing how elements interact and change over time, we can identify patterns and relationships that inform holistic and effective design strategies.
So if systems thinking provides the framework for how we kind of think about the world around us, then design thinking provides us with a framework for how we actually engage with the world.
Design thinking complements systems thinking by providing a structured, human-centered approach to problem solving. It emphasizes creativity, empathy, and iteration to develop solutions that meet real needs. The stages of design thinking: define, ideate, prototype, test, iterate, and empathize mirror the process of observation and interaction in permaculture. Defining begins by clearly articulating the problem to create a foundation for identifying effective solutions. Ideation is the creative phase where multiple solutions can be brainstormed based on our observations. Permaculture encourages thinking in terms of patterns and systems to generate innovative design ideas. Prototyping is when we use small-scale versions or representations of a proposed solution to allow for experimentation and refinement. Then we test. Prototyping involves testing real-world problems in real-world conditions to provide feedback that informs any improvements. Then we iterate, with a cyclical process where each stage is revisited as needed to refine and optimize the design. Finally, we empathize, immersing ourselves in the user's or community's experience to deeply understand their needs and challenges and context. In permaculture, this corresponds to observing the relationship between all elements in an ecosystem or community. The first permaculture principle, observe and interact, emphasizes the importance of careful observation and meaningful interaction as the foundation for sustainable and effective design. This principle underscores the need to understand the system that we work with, whether it's natural, social, or built, before taking action. By grounding our efforts in observation and interaction, we can create designs that align with the interconnected and dynamic nature of the world, ensuring long-term resilience and adaptability. Observation in permaculture goes beyond simply looking. It's an active and intentional process of learning from the patterns, behaviors, and relationships within a system. By dedicating time to observe, we can gain insights into the unique characteristics of a site, including its microclimates, soil conditions, water flow, and existing biodiversity. Interaction builds upon observation by encouraging active engagement with the system. This may involve testing ideas on a smaller scale, interacting with wider communities, or experimenting with different arrangements. Through interaction, we gather feedback that refines our understanding and informs better decision-making. Interaction is not limited to human activity. It includes fostering relationships between system elements. By observing and interacting, we move beyond static designs to create dynamic, evolving systems that respond to both external changes and internal growth.
So both systems and design thinking are at the center of permaculture. And I have a previous video that I've made where I kind of documented the start of my permaculture journey. I'll link that one in the description below, but there was an exercise in there that I went through, which I definitely recommend giving a go if you're new to systems thinking. It's a really simple systems mapping exercise. I will also leave a link below to my completely free Introduction to Systems Thinking bundle with the School of Social Impact, and you can learn more about applying systems thinking to any kind of local or global challenge that you would like to explore through the lens of systems thinking. But systems mapping is a really great way to just kind of begin to think in systems and understand the key components in a system you might be working in. So in that video, I use the example of your home as the system, whether you have a garden or not. It's a system, it has a clearly defined boundary. Your property or your home is the boundary of that system. There's everything within the system, and then there's the wider environment that the system also interacts with. So there's the rest of the properties on your street, there's the local community, there's the local law, the local council, all of the services like waste collection, water services that you utilize within your system are all connected to the wider environment. So that's a really great kind of introduction to systems thinking. But I wanted to explore another really useful tool in this video that I think can really help us when we're beginning to observe and interact with a system, and that is a SWOT analysis.
A SWOT analysis is an effective tool for observing and interacting within systems because it provides a structured framework for assessing both the internal and external dynamics of a situation. By identifying strengths and weaknesses, internal factors, and opportunities and threats, external factors, it encourages deep observation of the system's current state and its broader context. This process fosters an awareness of existing resources, capacities, and limitations, while also uncovering potential leverage points or risks. Interaction comes into play as our insights gained through the SWOT analysis can guide our actions and adaptations, enabling iterative design and real-time responsiveness.
The thing I love about a SWOT analysis is it kind of takes us from just observation to beginning to interact. We're not only observing the system and making sense of the system, but we're beginning to look at how different aspects of the system, different resources, different things like information, capital, all those things, what we call energy within a system, might be utilized towards a particular goal. If that goal in the context of permaculture is something like living a more sustainable life or creating a more sustainable home and living in alignment with those permaculture ethics. So a SWOT analysis allows us to kind of consider what are the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats in terms of our permaculture goals. I think that one of the things that's most exciting about permaculture is that we're never really beginning with a blank canvas. Even if you were to hypothetically begin your permaculture journey on a blank plot of land, that land as a system still has some kind of a relationship with its external environment. There are existing processes and dynamics that are always at play. Most of us begin with an existing property, an existing house. We might be renting, whatever it might be. And observation and interaction allows us the ability to find opportunities within existing frames of reference. I love the expression that our limitations create style, or it's limitations that allow us to be creative. And so looking at how our system currently operates, the resources that we already have available to us, allows us to be a little bit more creative in terms of how we begin to design within this system. So often we can think that, we just want to go out and we want to buy the newest things, the fanciest things. But by taking time to just step back, slowly observe things, we begin to understand the system in much more detail. Some other really helpful tools or ways of beginning to observe and interact with your system is activities like sun mapping. Take some time to kind of construct a map of your property and consider the way that the sun travels over your property. Is your property facing north, south, east, west? At what points are most of your garden beds going to be in full sun? At what points of the day are they in the shade? And just observing this throughout the span of a year, right? Because the sun's path is going to change as the seasons change. And so observing that is going to help you to be able to design your garden more effectively based on the amount of sun that it has access to. That's something that I found particularly useful, and I have another video on my channel all about sun mapping. Another great activity you can do is just observing what kind of wildlife you have in your yard. This principle of observation and interaction is really important because it extends beyond just our own personal permaculture projects, but in terms of the work we might be doing as social change makers, it can be really easy, especially in times of crisis or injustice, for us to want to dive in and do something to make a difference. But in order for us to actually address the root causes of the problem and to see if the actions that we're taking have any kind of feedback, if there's any kind of causal relationship that leads to other problems or other challenges within the system, we're only going to be able to notice those once we've taken the time to actually observe what happens when we interact with the system. So this extends far beyond just our own personal projects. It's a really important principle for both permaculture, but also the work that we do as social change makers more broadly. If you're interested in learning more, definitely check out my systems thinking resources. I will link them down below. And if you found this video particularly useful or have any questions, definitely feel free to leave them in the comments. And I'll be back next month with a video all about our second permaculture principle.